Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Hearing none, motion to approve the agenda is circulated. Councillor Thorburn, seconded by Councillor Frazier. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Probably the next council meeting, we're going to try something different. Mrs. Porter-Lowe and I were at a how to run an effective meeting session by Ellie Mina, who came in for the UNSM. And apparently when you have items like that, you can pass it by just asking if there's no objection. So there's some efficiencies to be gained there, apparently. We're going to try that. Unanimous consent. So we'll see how that goes. Just as we go to announcements, I just want to acknowledge the passing of Police Chief Dave McGuinness, as well as Councillor and former Fire Chief Billy Rodenizer over the last few weeks. Sad time for our community, both servants in this community who gave their time, both very largely respected men, and they will be missed. Billy's funeral was packed with firefighters from across the province, and it was quite something to hear some of the testimonies about his life and the service he gave to his town. And Dave's was no different. So our condolences to the families and to the community who have lost two very important people. Now, before we get on with this meeting, we have some guests here, some special guests. Don't let that go to your head. But today is it's kind of a bittersweet council meeting, because Ken, who was going to call in sick because he didn't want any attention, today is Ken's last public council meeting, at least sitting in this chair. And so I think I thought it was fitting to have all the mayors that Ken served with here today. Ken, you've served this town with pride and with dignity and loyalty, and wherever you went for conferences, we were proud that you represented us. And after a distinguished career, you leave us, having led us through, helping 4 mayors through unprecedented growth as the fastest growing town of our size in the province. And so I hope you're proud of the work that you've done, and you will be missed, and you will be always welcome in the most uncomfortable gallery of all the councils in the province. So without any further ado, if you gentlemen would mind coming forward, and Ken, if you would mind standing up here, we're going to do a photo. And we'd like to welcome the former mayors, Ernie Bolivar, Carol Publicover, and David Walker here. We're going to go right in front here. You guys know the routine. Just pretend you're getting a travel grant, student travel grant.
Oh, yep.
Well, you guys forget.
It's like a lineup.
Of the 4 of us, how come I'm the only one in a suit?
Yeah.
Something's not right.
Okay, so make me laugh, the picture will be blurry. You want to leave it to camera?
Oops.
Lynn, come on up. Squeeze right in there.
One picture, you know, this one.
Before you go anywhere, on behalf of the town of Bridgewater, thank you for your You guys can feel free to stay for the whole meeting. You know how exciting it is.
She's halfway out.
Holy smokes, Carol. Thanks for coming.
It's already gone.
Our first item is delegation. Lloyd Tancock and Cheryl Grantham. And are you okay to start? We're a little early. Are you okay with that?
Oh, I'm fine.
All right. Yeah. No, if you're good, then we'll start.
I've got 3 meetings tonight, thank you.
be as efficient as we can. If you don't mind heading to the podium, and you're representing the South Shore Stamp Club.
Yes, thank you. I have to apologize. Cheryl Grantham couldn't be with me. She also has 2 meetings tonight, so she went to the other first one, and I'm at this one. We're spreading around. Thank you for your time. I have 10 minutes, I'm told, and I'll easily keep to that. I do have a pass out. If I could ask that each of the councillors and the mayor be given one of these while I speak, and I will need them back. There should be 7 there. Wait, you have those all before I start. Okay, so what you have there are some pictures of Pigeonuiska Park. And I hope I got it pretty close to correct. I've been working on that pronunciation for a while. The South Shore Stamp Club, which is what I'm representing tonight, has been in existence for 20 years now. I started a club for kids a few years before that, and then the adult club started, and it's been going strong. One of the things that our people collect in addition to stamps are what we call postal history, and that includes all the markings that are on envelopes and postcards. Cancellations, other markings such as overdue postage or too late or something like that. And Bridgewater has had 2 special postmarks in the history so far, one with respect to the centenary of the town, its birthday, and we had one here as well when we had the forestry capital of Canada was in Lunenburg County, and Bridgewater, along with 7 other towns in the county, had special postmarks that were used throughout that year. But it's been a long time since the last one. So our club, specifically Cheryl Grantham, and I'm sorry Cheryl couldn't be here tonight, but she's the instigator of this program that we pursued. It takes a long time to get Canada Post to do something of significance. Try to get a stamp from them is almost impossible, but they're pretty good for envelopes and postmarks. So within the last year, Cheryl's been working diligently to get a postmark, and the postmark that will be available as of October 28th, you have a copy of it there. It's blown up much larger than, well, of course, what it is, but it's the postmark that's in between the two pictures. That postmark will be available for use at the main post office in Bridgewater up on North Street. And there's really no time limit. A lot of postmarks are in effect for a year. From October 28th onward, that postmark will be available for use basically until it breaks or whatever, until it's replaced by something else. So we're quite proud to have talked Canada Post into having this to start with. The postmark, obviously it's available right now because I have copies of it. It is on Canada Post website. However, it is not being used. Canada Post has agreed not to use it until our annual stamp fair, which is being held on October the 28th. It's a Saturday at the Michelin Social Club, where we've been holding our annual fairs for a number of years now. And Canada Post will officially launch or unveil that postmark on that day. And collectors of postal history around the province, we expect, will be there to get one of the first day cancels. So it's somewhat of a big deal for philatelists, stamp collectors, and postal history collectors specifically. Because it's a special ceremony, there will be a little pomp that goes with the circumstance. And although I haven't officially made the request, I understand from your communications director that the mayor does have it on his calendar to attend on that day. I'm hopeful that that's still the case. We'd very much like to have the town mayor there to give a few words with respect to the launch of this postmark, and Canada Post will have an official there as well. I did make the request from Acadia First Nations to have their chief or somebody in their place available. Unfortunately, they've not responded to my email, so I don't expect anybody to be there. It's scheduled for 10:30 in the morning. a brief remarks from the mayor if he can be there, or his delegate, and the postmaster or his delegate from the Bridgewater Post Office. Then the official stamping of the postmark. It'll then be available for use of the public. They'll have them on that day. We've made arrangements with a local county historical society group of ladies who are going to provide trays of sandwiches, sweets, and we're also pretty darn sure that we have in the works to have a large sheet cake replicating the postmark as well, to be cut and available for people to have on that day. In addition to that, we've got 100 envelopes. You have a photocopy of both the front and back of the envelope, so the back has the photo credits on it. But these envelopes have stamps attached to them. You see in the upper right-hand corner a stamp picturing the park as well as the main cachet on each of them. And those, there's 50 of each of those we will have available that day for sale to people who collect such things. The postmark will be put on them for those who wish to buy them on that day. And the stamps themselves come in sheets of 100. You see one on each little envelope there. That's what the sheet looks like, 100 of them. So that's basically what I wanted to make a public announcement on here today of the efforts that our club have made to have this special cancellation for Bridgewater Park, and again to officially invite the mayor to be there to help us in the launch of this stamp and in the celebrations. And we're hopeful that the council would see. If you don't, then we'll survive without your assistance. But we're hopeful that you might see, as we're doing something that's recognizing the town of Bridgewater, to assist us in some of the expenses. We think that for $100 we can cover the expenses of the sandwiches and trays and the cake, the decorating that we're having to pay for. And if you see within your budget to take it out of whether it's what you call it, petty cash or something, I know you have some throwaway funds for deserving things, and I'm suggesting that this is a very deserving entity. We won't turn the mayor down from coming if you don't see fit to do that, and he can share in the cake, and we'd love to have you. That's basically what I had to say, and if you have any questions on things, I'll try to answer them for you.
Any questions from members of council? Councilor McGinnis.
So why Pichanuska?
Why?
Yes. Well, I'm happy you did.
Yeah, well, councils are usually some special event. This year, one of the special events in Bridgewater was the completion of the King Street, the waterfront restoration work, and that park, and you had a large gathering for the official opening of it, and we just thought that that was an appropriate theme.
Great. Great.
I think it's really neat.
I think it's
think
great.
that's really.
And the reason I have to have those back is Canada Post says we're not supposed to tell anybody that these councils are available. And
So the cat's a little out of the bag when this gets posted on YouTube tomorrow.
We have posters going up all over the community and the county over the next month, advertising the event. And I have a poster here. If I could leave it, if you have a place within the building somewhere that you could have that posted.
Do you have any more?
Appreciate that very much. I can get more. I just brought the one tonight, but certainly I can get more.
Yeah, we can post that in the front of Town Hall there in the front door. But if you had a couple more you could drop off
Yeah, I'd like to have
at
one.
the
for
front
Legion.
desk, we can.
Sure, love to do that. Thank
Or
you.
actually, we can photocopy it.
Photocopy it. I need one for the Legion and the Fire Hall.
Super,
All
thank
right.
you kindly.
Right. Thank you for coming.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll see you on the 28th
Yep.
at 10:30. Our next item is are the minutes from September 11th, 2017. Motion to approve.
Can we go back to announcements? We kind of missed that.
Yes, sorry. I should have asked if there are any other announcements.
Yeah, I happen to have one today, so that's why.
Well, let's hear it.
Anyway, as you all know, October's Fire Prevention Week, and I just wanted to get a message out there. This year, it's running from the 8th to the 14th. And it always is the week of the Great Chicago Fire that was on the 9th of October. So And the theme this year is seconds can mean the difference between residents of our town escaping safely from a fire or having their lives end in tragedy. That is why this year's fire prevention theme is Every Second Counts. And they're asking you to practice 2 ways out of your house for an evacuation and actually practice twice a year. So we're going to kick off this year's fire prevention on October the 8th with our big church parade, and then we march to the cenotaph for dedication. And at that time, Honorary Chief Rodenizer's name will be unveiled from that monument. We do that every year. And also on Tuesday and maybe even into Wednesday, we do a lot of fire drills to the preschools and the schools, elementary, juniors, seniors. And so you just have to ask the fire department, and they'll do them during those days. And of course, on the 14th is our 3rd annual emergency service fair where the police, the RSMP, EHS, Ground Search and Rescue, and the fire service gets together and puts on demonstrations, food and games for the kids, prizes to be won. So please come to the fire station at 81 Dominion Street on Saturday, October the 14th. And that's from 1 to 4 p.m. So fire prevention means a lot to the fire service, and hopefully we can get some people on the parade route this year, because it is time to remember what they give each and every second of each and every day. And having been there for 40 years, and we have some people with over that, so it really would be nice to see a few people at the cenotaph on Sunday, or at least a few people along the parade route to encourage your volunteers. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Councilor Graves.
I've got 2. One of them is the United Way Bikes for Kids. It's now ongoing at Center Court, Bridgewater Mall. We're collecting bikes, gently used bikes, until November 5th. That's Sunday, November 5th. Those bikes will be repaired over the winter and given to kids and families that can't afford them in the spring. The second one is the Whimsical Children's Christmas Store is in need of donations, still in need of donations. You can drop those off at the Arc Monday to Friday between 9 and 2:30, or we have a new drop-off location now at the Bridgewater Mall Center Court, and that's open mall hours. So it's 7 days a week, pretty well 12 hours a day. So anything that you could do to support those 2 projects would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements from council? All right. So we're back to minutes of September 11th that have been circulated. Any questions or comments on those?
Nope.
Hearing none, motion to approve the minutes as circulated. Deputy Mayor Tanner, seconded by Councilor Graves. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Planning items, proposed development agreement for Ferguson Brewery at 673 King Street. And one of our faithful planning staff here.
Yes. So this is, like you say, an application for a development agreement. So the property we're talking about is here, 673 King Street, currently housing the Tradewinds Real Estate Office, and there's a Wine Kings upstairs, and Frickenstein Microbrewery is a new use that started in the spring, and they've been operating throughout the summer. They're applying on behalf of Robert and Linda DeVoe, who own the property. Just a little bit about the land use. It's right in the downtown of Bridgewater, lots of other commercial activity. There's some office uses, there's residential use on the top floor of that property, and it's across the street from King Street Court as well. So here's the property here. It's zoned C1 historic commercial downtown. Like I said, the current use is as a microbrewery. They can do that as of right in that zone. They're requesting to add a beverage room and lounge use, which requires a development agreement. So we had a public participation meeting, which is required by the municipal planning strategy, on September 13th. There weren't any members of the public who attended, but we did have a conversation with the applicant and cleared up the process and just got a little bit more information about what they intended to do with their new use. We feel that the new use would fit well within the neighborhood. There's several other bars and restaurants in the stretch of King Street where this property is located. It will provide another revenue stream for a small local business. The servicing requirements wouldn't change for this property with the new use, and we don't have any concerns about this. So just a little bit about the difference between the two uses. So it's currently used as a microbrewery. So the definition for microbrewery is a small-scale brewery which typically produces limited quantity of specialty beers and may sell beverages and food made on-site to the public. So it's only food and beverages that they produce on-site. They can't bring in any other kinds of beers. Whereas a beverage room and lounge is a premise licensed as a beverage room, lounge, cabaret, or tavern under the Liquor Control Act. So the big difference here would be that they would be able to sell beer that was produced somewhere else and food as well, and they could obtain a different class of liquor license under the Liquor Control Act. So our land use bylaw doesn't speak to how they serve their beer, but my understanding is if they get this new license under the Liquor Control Act, they could sell glasses of beer instead of, a series of sample size glasses. So you have a copy of the proposed development agreement with the report. The beverage room and lounge use would only apply to the unit occupied by Frankenstein, so you wouldn't be able to open up a bar in any of the other units in the building. They can't expand the proposed use without a substantive amendment to the development agreement, but of course another development agreement or a substantive amendment is possible in the future if the property owner wants to have that use available in the other units on the property. So just a reminder of where we are in the process. We've gone through these two stages. We had a public participation meeting, and tonight I'm asking for first consideration of the development agreement and asking council to set the public hearing for Monday, October 23rd. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from members of council? It's pretty straightforward and clear. Hearing none, can I have a motion on the floor, please?
Sure. I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater direct staff to schedule a public hearing and that final consideration of the development agreement regarding 673 King Street during the regular council meeting on Monday, October 23rd, 2017 at 6:00 p.m. in council chambers of Town Hall.
Have a seconder, please. Councilor Frazier, any further discussion? Any discussion? No? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Correspondence for information, a letter from the Municipality District of Lunenburg denying our request for additional funding to All Wheels Skate Park. Yeah, that's pretty much that letter. Their contribution sits at $80,000 plus they have a person on the committee. So that's their contribution. So we thank them for that. Nothing under correspondence for action. Reports and recommendation. We have the building inspection report for 2017. And as always, that's for information. If you have questions, you can talk to Mr. Feener. Deputy Mayor?
I'd circulate a suggestion and wonder if it's possible, or if we could ask staff if it's possible to add page 4 to this report that might list the various permits and just a brief description of perhaps from the database of what is happening. I think it might help us just to know what's, or be more aware of what's happening in town. I assume this is just a one-click report, but in Town Suite. But
Yeah, so,
could we just maybe check into that?
yeah, I don't see why we couldn't.
Yeah, we can follow up on that.
I mean, that's valuable information.
Yeah.
Also interesting to see what the trends are, so I think that's good. Any other questions on that? Okay. Recommendation of the Grants to Organizations Committee. This is the August intake, and so we have a number there, and we can discuss this first, or we can put a motion on the floor and then discuss it. What is council's wish? Does someone from the
Put it
committee?
on the floor, go right ahead.
Okay.
Okay. I'll make a motion, your worship, that town council, sorry, I'm on the wrong. Bear with me. Yes, that town council for the town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Grants to Organization Committee and award grants for the August intake period as follows. $500 capital grant Bridgewater Photographic Society, $2,000 capital grant Lunenburg County Sports Heritage Society, $200 operating grant for Red Bear Healing Home Society, and a $500 development grant for Association du Centre Communautaire de la Rive Sud.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor McGinnis. Discussion? Mover, seconder? No? Anyone?
Are we voting on each one as a separately?
No, it's one
Those
motion.
Amounts together, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess from my point of view, I think the Bridgewater Photographic Society, the fact that they're going to be sharing images with the town of Bridgewater, I think is good for us to increase our image bank of great professionally taken shots for the town. I think that's a good thing for us, and I think it's a good investment for 500. For the Lunenburg County Sport Heritage Society, I think it's a great idea. However, I think funding should be population-based, so per capita funding. I think the town of Bridgewater is paying far too much. But I also think that we should wait and see what the response is from the community. If nobody wants this thing, if there's no community support, then why do they need government support? We should be the last ones that they ask, and not really the first. So I wouldn't recommend going with the Lunenburg County Heritage Society. In terms of the Red Bear Healing Home Society, there's no budgets. It looks like, to me at least, looking at their website, which is very basic, that you have to either go to Halifax to sign up for the service, so it's a personal, I get the impression it's a personal one-on-one service. If not, then they will come down to us. There seems to be somewhat the possibility of a cost involved with that, so I'm not 100% sure. I also reached out to the Nonprofit Society, and I started reading this on Sunday, so it was only a day, less than a day, and nobody's gotten back to me to see if they see any value in it. And I'm talking people like Freeman House and Better Together and a few others that would, Harbor House, that would see the value in something like that, so I wouldn't recommend that one either. And the last one is the French school. The original ask is $7,500, so, and what we're proposing is giving them $500. But what happens next year, and what happens the year after that? This is a really, really, really expensive program, really expensive, and a lot of that money is going to staffing, very, very high. So staffing, you're staffing something that's already in a school filled with staff. From my perspective, I could do a lot with that kind of money, and I could do a lot with no money. And you probably still have many of the same outcomes, so I wouldn't recommend that one either.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Tanner.
I have perhaps some of the more similar concerns. The Sport Heritage Society, the bulk of the demographic distribution in this county is in municipality district of Lunenburg, and so I would question why their funding request isn't higher than the town of Bridgewater's. I think it's a great idea. I support it fully, but I would suggest that MODL should be perhaps ranked a little higher on the funding level. And then the funding with the French school, I struggle with this as well a bit because again, some of our municipal partners are not listed as a funding request in that particular document. So I don't know if they are being, if they truly are being requested to help fund this particular project. And I also know we spend a fair amount of money funding Art Happening, and I realize this is there could be a French-speaking requirement, but why aren't we leveraging our Art Happening folks who seem to be quite talented in this kind of thing, and perhaps creating a bit of a partnership to Councillor Graves' point, they've asked for a very huge commitment, and we're just giving a very minor amount, which I'm not sure if that's even going to help them at all, when maybe that same amount could be leveraged using Art Happening. So I won't be, given it's one motion, I won't be supporting the motion.
So I'll just tell you something that maybe I won't bring you into this because I'll say I learned this at this workshop, was that, it's very easy to refer this motion, not refer the item, refer the whole motion to a future meeting to get answers to these questions. And then when we bring this back, the motion's already on the table. We don't even have to make the motion. We just go right into the discussion with the information we have, if that's council's wish. But I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to speak who hasn't spoken yet.
Everyone knows my views on what I think MODL should be paying for various things. And yeah, we should defer this.
I know when Bill and I, as part of the grants organization committee, were discussing these items, it was sort of knowing, our partners supporting this, where we look at the French school and, it's for all of Lunenburg County, not necessarily just town of Bridgewater. So I think there was some lack of information there that could help us support the decision. So we looked at having more answers, but at the same time wanted to bring it forward. And I see that other councilors have similar concerns that we did.
Councillor Thorman, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, it
No.
sounds fine, I think.
My only reason why I wanted to defer this, we are sort of breaking new ground, some of the comments that I heard. And so I'd like to take that into consideration.
Yeah, and I agree with the comments that Councillor Gray has made. For some of these, it's easier. And in the past, we've had ones that it's almost no-brainer, isn't? I mean, you have to check into it and do your due diligence, but some of them, it's just, yep, this program fits within our mandate for grants to organization. And I do feel like it's starting to spiral further and further away, that perhaps the ease of doing business with the town makes it so it's more appealing, or at least the process is more appealing to come to us because it just might be easier to get your money. And these things have to be a partnership. We can't always bear the brunt of that. So I agree. I would like more information, certainly on a couple of those. The healing home one, I need a lot more information on that one. But I agree with the comments made. Councillor Thorburn.
Yeah, but it appears that all the requests fit the application process and were brought forward. So is there something wrong with the process? Should it be changed so that some of the stuff can be asked prior to it coming here?
Well, it's certainly something we can look at. I think the thing that really throws a curveball to us is the partnership part of it.
Yeah.
I think that's where I sense the uneasiness is. And I go back to, if it's easier to ask, if you need $2,000, it's easier to ask the town for $2,000 than ask two other people or another person for $1,000 and the town for $1,000. And I'm less worried about, well, again, I need more information on the healing home. I'm less concerned about giving the money to the other organizations, but I am concerned about the amount that we're giving, because I feel like it's coming to us alone.
Sitting in a
No,
motion.
I agree.
But if we need to
Yeah.
look at other pieces of the policy, then we should do that. Councilor McDonald.
I definitely agree with the comments that have been made, and I see one of the biggest issues being that a lot of services are regionalizing, which isn't actually an issue, that's a good thing, because they're reaching more people, and that's fantastic. But again, then who are you going to for funding? I know it's might be a pie in the sky kind of idea, but can a regional fund be set up that the municipalities are all contributing to, and there is a selection committee? You know, is it time to start looking at something like that, because a lot of the services are becoming more regional? I know that's easier said than done.
I was going to say, you're suggesting a group where the two of us get together and agree on items of where to send money?
Maybe more than two of us, but yeah, it's getting, and we don't want to be difficult to work with as a community organization. So, you know, I guess I'm trying to look at how do we streamline it a little bit so that we're not a difficult source of support.
Does everyone want to just have a little bit more time with that? Is everyone in
Sure.
agreement? Just so there is, if you refresh your motion package, there is a motion to refer this to the October 10th council meeting. And again, it refers the motion, so it will just come back. We won't remake the motion unless we make changes to it. So if someone would like to make the motion to refer this to the October 10th council meeting? Yeah.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater refer the motion for item 10.2, recommendation of Grants to Organizations Committee, Grants to Organizations, August intake, to the October 10th, 2017 Town Council meeting to allow for more information to be provided.
Thank you. Seconder, Councilor Thorburn.
So just to be clear, if one of those is not accepted, one of the four grants is not accepted for whatever reason, does that mean the motion is gone? Meaning it?
We could amend the motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. It should be on an individual basis.
Yep, we can do that. So we'll roll with that, and if we need to amend the motion, we can do that for sure. Ready for the question?
Question?
Question's been called. Those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. FCM, oh, yes?
Is there information you want staff to get? Because I'm not clear what, we want further information, but how we're getting the information? And what information specifically we going after?
Can we just send an email to?
Yeah, do you want to send an email to Ken?
Okay.
When do you leave? On vacation? I mean, what, on vacation? I would, yes, let's send it to Mrs. Portillo, please. You're still here?
sort of.
Poor Ken. FCM Sustainable Community Awards nomination for Clean Energy Financing Program. So for this award to be nominated, I've already signed a letter to nominate it, but it needs to be basically ratified by council so that our Clean Energy Financing Program can be nominated for the FCM's 2018 Sustainable Community Awards program, which is kind of exciting. If someone would care to make that motion.
I'll bring it forward, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of staff and ratify the actions of the mayor and CAO for the provisions of a letter of support to awards Clean Foundation's nomination of the Clean Energy Financing Program for the 2018 FCM Sustainability Community Award program as outlined in document 17-145.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor McDonald. Any discussion?
Question?
Questions being called. Just for a quick reminder that this is the same program that won the Climate Change Leader Award from the
Yes.
UNSM, so it's probably a good chance we'll get that. Questions being called. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Recommendation of Parks, Recreation, and Culture Advisory Committee, citizen appointment. So this name actually came forward in the spring when we had a vacancy, but we couldn't kind of appoint this person while we waited for a vacancy, but we have a new vacancy that has come up. So Frank Benben has agreed to join us at tomorrow's Parks and Rec meeting. So if someone would care to make a motion to officially appoint him to the most fun committee at the town of Bridgewater, that would be
It is.
great.
I would move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater endorse the recommendation of the Director of Parks, Recreation and Culture and appoint Frank Benben to serve on the Parks, Recreation and Culture Advisory Committee effective immediately for the remainder of a term ending October 31st, 2019.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Frazier, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Business arising unfinished business, the MOU between the Bridgewater Development Association and the town of Bridgewater. So, as we know, the BDA is winding up, and this letter is just to kind of put the final dates in place for that. So it really will be the end of December, just due to some ongoing projects and obligations to the employee. So if someone would like to make a motion to accept that, Councilor Frazier.
Yes, Your Worship. Make a motion that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the agreement between the Town of Bridgewater and the Bridgewater Development Association as contained in document 17-013F.
Seconder, please.
Second that.
Deputy Mayor Tanner, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. New business, the 2017 UNSM Annual Conference is coming up in November. I believe it's the first full week in November in Halifax. And if someone could make a motion to have some delegates appointed to that conference?
Yes, Your Worship. I move the Town Council of the Town of Bridgewater appoint Mayor Mitchell, Deputy Mayor Tanner, and Councilor Fougere as delegates to the 2017 UNSM Fall Conference, and that all registration and reasonable expenses associated be approved.
Before I ask for seconder, is anyone else interested in going? We did have these names put forward, but I should have asked that before. No? Can I have a seconder, please? Councilor Thorburn, any discussion? Just before we vote on this, Councilor Frazier and I are going to be coming to council with our FCM report, so it hasn't been forgotten. It's just been a busy summer, but I see you at the corner of my eye. But that is coming. So I'll take the blame for that one being delayed, but it's coming. Okay, ready for the question?
Question.
All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. 2016-17 audited financial statements. And our Director of Finance, Mrs. Kaiser, is here. And so the floor is yours.
Good evening. Just a short presentation on the 2016-17 audited financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2017. So, the financial statements for approval this evening include the Town of Bridgewater consolidated financial statements for the year ended March 31st, 2017, and the Town of Bridgewater Trust Fund financial statements for the same time period. Both have unqualified audit opinions. And this is just a slide showing what the consolidated statements include. They're prepared in accordance with the Public Sector Accounting Board standards to meet regulatory requirements, including the town operating capital, cemetery, museum, reserves, 50% of the Lunenburg County Multipurpose Center Corporation, equity in the Public Service Commission of Bridgewater, and the Joint Services Board. And just to note that the PSC is required to comply with international financial reporting standards for purposes of the inclusion in the consolidated statements. So these are the statements that are provided: financial position, financial activities, change in net debt, changes in financial position, the notes, and then there are a number of supplementary schedules that show individual funds. And then trust fund statements, financial activities, financial position, and changes in financial position. So the focus of the presentation will be on the operating fund and capital fund activity. So this is just a snapshot of the financial position on a consolidated basis on March 31st. So 23.3 million in financial assets, 13.2 in liabilities. So net financial assets, which is the difference of about $10 million. And non-financial assets, which is mainly tangible capital assets, but there is work in progress and inventory for 77 million. So total net assets of 87.5 million. So this is, on a consolidated basis, a statement of financial activities, revenue of 21.5 million, expenditures of 18.3, the change in the Public Service Commission net equity of 383,000, so net revenue of 3.6 million. Now, this is on a consolidated basis, so it includes amounts that are not used for purposes of the tax rate calculation and excludes some amounts that are. So to bring it back to what we look at when we set the operating budget, there are a number of adjustments that take us to consolidated income to operating income. So you start with the 3.6 million on the consolidated statement. Then we need to adjust all the amounts that are included in the consolidated income but not in the tax rate calculation. So amortization of tangible capital assets, that's not included in the tax rate calculation. Capital revenue, so we've got 3.6 million in capital revenue, which is mainly government grants and so on for capital projects. LCLC consolidated net loss, 502,000, and that includes depreciation. Equity in the PSC, we need to adjust for the cemetery net loss, the museum net income, and the reserve net income. So all of those amounts are included in the consolidated income, but not in the tax rate income. And then these amounts are not included in consolidated income, but are included in the tax rate calculation. Principal on debt for the LCLC, capital from operating, and net transfers to reserves. So the surplus for purposes of the tax rate calculation was actually $957,658, and we're required by the Department of Municipal Affairs to transfer that to a reserve. So when you get to the operating statement, you'll see zero net income because that $957,000 has been transferred to reserve. So looking at where the surplus came from, you've got more revenue than anticipated, 346,000. Expenditures were less than anticipated, 612,000 to give us our surplus. So looking more specifically at some of these variances, 235,000 in taxation, and that's mainly deed-transfer. We had a really good year for deed-transfer tax, as you'll recall. Grants in lieu were quite close. Sales of services, recreation admin and programming were under budget, but again, offset in expenses. We did have some additional revenue for funding for the PACE program from other municipal units, but again, offset in expenses. The own source revenue is about 55,000 more than budget. And the reserve transfer about 33,000 more than budget, so a total of 345, almost 346,000. On the expenditure side, there was a savings of about 175,000 in general government. The biggest variance in there is the contingency. You recall we had a contingency for a couple of things. One was for the salary review and for the dog park. The salary review, the expenses would be distributed among the departments as opposed to all charged to general government. And the additional money for the dog park, actually, we had to record it at last year end, but that was after the budget was set, so those funds weren't required. And there were a number of other smaller variances in there too. We had a savings in the liability claims, which was subsequently transferred to the reserves, savings in allowance for doubtful accounts, grants to organizations, a number of areas. Protective services, savings of about $48,000. A lot of that was in salaries in the police department, also firefighting equipment. Transportation, a savings of $341,000. Storm sewer, snow clearing, roads and streets were savings in all of these areas. And it was a good year for snow this year, 16-17. Savings in environmental health as well, which is the sewers and solid waste. So, and there were savings in both of those areas, sewers and solid waste, some savings at the wastewater treatment plant and the sewage collection. Environmental development, which is planning, overspent, but those things were offset in revenue. There was some money spent on the public transit feasibility study, but we got funding for it on the other side. Also, additional expenditures on the sustainability festival, but there's revenue to offset it. And recreation and culture, about $75,000 in savings, mostly in parks.
What's public health again?
Pardon me?
Public health? What is public health again?
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped public health. Public health is the cemetery, our contribution to the cemetery.
Okay, that's right.
LCLC had a small deficit that had previously been approved by council. And transfers to reserves is about $175,000 over budget. And that has to do with the transfer of the joint services pension plan. That was 50,000 of it. There's also 44,000 that was, and also a number of donations that went to the reserve in through revenue and out to the reserve that have been set aside for specific purposes. So looking at how it compared to what we projected a savings of $666,000. So we've got $290,000 more than that, actually, greater than anticipated in admin, transportation, sewage collection, solid waste, and recreation. Just a quick look at the capital budget. The total capital budget, almost $7.5 million. This year, the actual was 5.9 million, so there was almost 1.6 million. Of that 1.6 million, we carried forward 1.44, and the difference is just net savings in various projects. Some over, some under, but overall under budget. This is the reserve, the operating reserve, $3 million, and just taking off of that what's been allocated. We have the future changes in landfill closure. We have 37,000 set aside for that. The LCLC donations, that actually is being used in the 17-18 operating budget to assist with the debt payments. We've got a snow clearing reserve of 125,000. We got a donation this year from an estate for Veterans Memorial Park of $30,000. We set aside almost $45,000 for the parking infrastructure downtown. That's the surplus from the parking levy over the years. There's almost $37,000 in there for the skate park, $13,000. These are donations that have been specifically given for the skate park or for the dog zone. We have $17,000 in the reserve for liability claims for future years, and then there's some other smaller allocations. So the actual amount available in the operating reserve is about $2.65 million. Capital reserve, we've got $2.8 million. We've got the existing capital reserve loans, and then a capital reserve loan that was budgeted a number of years ago that hasn't been used yet. So 1.2, almost 1.3 million in the capital reserve. Special purpose tax reserve, 540,000, which of course is being kept for future debt payments. And that's it. Just many thanks to the auditors and all the finance staff, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
And thank you to yourself. Any questions from members of council? Quiet bunch tonight. It's nice to have a larger than projected
Yeah.
surplus. A busy town, it's nice to have that, that number going that way.
Just do have one question.
Yep.
But when you said on the parking levy infrastructure, is that money that we have specifically marked for some project, or is it just going in specifically?
It's being used in the 17-18 budget to do
Okay.
the parking infrastructure downtown.
So
Okay.
all the new
Yeah.
stuff we're
All the
putting
new
downtown?
stuff that we
Yeah,
have
kiosks
planning
and-
coming will be used out of that reserve?
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions? Someone prepared to make the first motion that is in the motion package? Don't all fight at once. I
Oh,
know
sorry.
everyone can take a turn.
I'm just trying to get it.
I'll do the first one. I move the town council for the town of Bridgewater approve the following unbudgeted transfers for 2016-17. The following donations received from operating to operating reserve to be used for the purpose specified by the donor. $16,000 Lunenburg County Multipurpose Center for debt retirement, $30,089 Veterans Memorial Park, $8,684 Bridgewater Skate Park, $4,300 South Shore Vet Dog Zone, $125 for Brookside Cemetery signage, $470 to the Rosé Museum Endowment Fund, $2,000 awarded by council on March 27, 2017 to the Bridgewater Tennis Club from operating to operating reserve until remaining funding is secured by the club. Parking levy surplus of $44,743 from operating to operating reserve to provide funding for parking infrastructure in 2017-18. And $36,985 related to the change in the landfill closure, post-closure estimate from the capital reserve fund to operating fund.
Thank you. Seconder, Councilor McDonald. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Someone care to make the second motion?
I will.
Thank you.
I move that Town Council for the Town of Bridgewater approve the audited financial statements for the Town of Bridgewater and the Town of Bridgewater Trust Fund for the year ended March 31st, 2017, as reviewed by the Audit Committee.
May I have a seconder, please? Councilor Graves. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. And there's no further business to.
I shall move we
come.
adjourn.
All right. Seconder? We are adjourned.
Sweet.